Well, welcome everybody to another broadcast for Debruary 2022. We're counting on down. Today's guest is just fabulous, and her resume or whatever you want to call it, her CV reads like a celebrity. So I'm pretty pleased to have her here. She's a New York Times bestselling author. She's a popular TED Talk speaker. She's done two TED Talks, and she's one of Oprah's Super Bowl 100. So she's going to be here today to talk to us not only about her latest book. It's called Cassandra Speaks. When Women Are the Storytellers, the Human Story Changes, which we all know is part of the problem. But she's also going to talk about a very important concept that is a component of winning at life, which is not feeling like you're fake and fraud. So we call that the imposter syndrome. So we're going to be covering a lot of ground today, but let me get her on here so we can get started. Hey,
Hello.
Elizabeth.
Hi, Deborah. Hi, everybody.
Hey. Well, I want to let's start off by giving me an overview about your book, because the title is very interesting in the concept of if men always tell the story, then what about women and what if our truths get presented? So tell me about that.
Yeah, well, I love stories. And from what I've watched of your show, you do too. That's how people learn. That's how we learn. We don't learn by like blah, 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 another concept. It's like, yeah, but what happened to you? And how does it show up in real life? How did he do it and she do it? And that's how humans have always learned through the ages. The Bible is a bunch of stories.
Right.
That's how we learn. Adam and Eve and Job and the Greek myths and movies and books. That's basically how people learn. And I've always loved stories. I've loved storytellers. I've loved writing. And when I set out to write this new book, Cassandra Speaks, I wanted to look at like, what are those old stories? What have they told us about how to live, how to be in relationship? What does it mean to be a hero? Things like that. And of course, you go back all the way back and back and back. And one thing stands out immediately. Guys were telling the stories. The stories were and there's nothing inherently wrong or bad about that. But if you haven't noticed, there is a difference between men and women and what we love and what makes us tick and how we live and our values. There's a lot of overlap. Sometimes we're the same, but there's differences. So there's this gaping hole in history about why did we tell the stories that way? And women's perspective has just been left out. So I looked at a lot of those old stories, especially the real well-known ones like Adam and Eve, where Eve is like, everything's great in the Garden of Eden until a woman comes along and she's curious, and then the fall, and everything gets totally screwed up. And it's the same with Pandora and lots of other myths, and Cassandra, which is one of my favorite stories that is just an example of women getting the short end of the stick. So I
Can you
explore a
tell me?
lot of
That's
myths.
one that I'm not really familiar with. So,
Sure.
yeah, we also heard the Pandora story and Eve and all that. But
Right.
who is Cassandra?
I became interested in the Cassandra story when, during that trial of the doctor, Larry Nasser, who had abused the gymnasts and the other young women,
Yeah.
and the wonderful judge in that trial, Judge Aquilina. At one point, she talked about these girls being our Cassandras. And I was like, was that a vague memory of that myth from like junior high school history or something? And so I read all about the Cassandra myth. And Cassandra was, now you have to remember, it's a made up story, okay? There was no real Cassandra. I don't think there was a real Eve either, but that's up for debate. Um, and uh, but Cassandra was a princess in the Greek mythology from the city of Troy, which was the enemy of Greece. And that's the Trojan War. That's
Hmm.
that's the Greeks against their enemy. And so Cassandra was this beautiful princess, and all the men wanted her to marry her. And the god men, Zeus and his son Apollo, They were hot to have Cassandra, and mortal men were after her too, but she just wanted to be a spiritual seeker. She wanted to be to work for the goddess Athena. But her father wanted her married, and so the god Apollo, who gave her the biggest gift he's going to offer her, if you marry me, you can be a prophetess. You can see into the future. You will see what's going to happen to your people, to your country. And she wanted that gift, so she said yes. And she didn't realize it meant the minute she said yes, he would try to have sex with her. And she refused him. And he was so angry that he put a curse on her. He said, Cassandra, you will see the future, but no one will believe you. So she would say everything she saw that was going to be happening to her family. She saw the Trojan War. She saw what would happen. She saw people dying, and she'd say it. And they would all say she was crazy. And then it would happen.
Boy.
And it's sort of like, the term gaslighting?
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of the earliest version of gaslight, where like these girls who were abused by the doctor, they would tell people. They would say, Dr. Larry Nasser did this to me. No one believed them. Over and over, hundreds of girls would tell their parents, would tell the Olympic Committee, would tell their college coaches. No one believed them. And that's the curse of Cassandra. You know what's happening to you. You tell the truth, but you're not believed. In fact, you're seen as something's wrong with you. And that's been haunting women through the ages. We're told we're too emotional, we're too hysterical, calm down, everything's okay. But we know in our bones something's wrong here. Hey, listen to me.
Right.
But, you women, you're just too emotional and hysterical. So that's the Cassandra stories. That's why I named the book, When Women Are the Storytellers. The human story will change, because we have a different perspective, and we need that balance.
I agree. That is very powerful stuff. And I just, I used to read Greek mythology all the time as a kid, but that's one story I guess I skipped. But that, yeah, in a certain sense, it probably was a good thing, because I don't think I would have had the emotional maturity to handle, that kind of weight.
Yeah. It's a weighty story. And if it
Yeah.
had been told from a woman's perspective, it would have been told differently. But since it was told through the male perspective, it was sort of seen like crazy Cassandra. There they go again. As opposed to, wow, she saw the future. She predicted the war. She knew what was going to happen. We should start listening to women.
So what's behind that though? Okay, now we're in 2022. Why are people still that way? Is it still because of the influence of the male story?
I think so. I
I'm just
think,
as an aside too. I mean, before I, and let you answer, I've noticed a lot of complaints and disbelief about the Me Too movement.
right.
So it, that's why I was holding on to this question, because I wanted to ask your perspective since you've looked into this.
Yeah. The Me Too movement is a fantastic example of the Cassandra myth, where women have been telling the truth of their experience forever. But our laws and our cultural values aren't aren't based on the perspective of women, nor created to protect women. It's on the one hand, it's complicated, and the other, it's kind of crude, especially for women of color. Like, the laws are not there in your favor so much of the time, in women's favor of communities, marginalized communities. And people with power don't really want to give it up. Why would you want to give it up? It serves you, and you're half the time you're not even aware of your privilege and that you're being served. So this is why, people will often say to me, why are you still a feminist? Women have gotten everything they want. Look, you're in the workplace and blah, blah, blah. But no, we still have so much more work to do. What I'm really interested in is women and men, um, men being absolutely proud to have their feminine self developed, to be more compassionate, to apologize, to be a participant in the family, to be a great dad's, that a man would say proudly, yeah, you know how they tell a girl, you can be anything a boy can be. Well, they don't
Mhm.
ever tell boys, you can be anything a girl can be. So that when men are
True.
proud to have qualities that are the beautiful edge of what feminine qualities are about, when men are proud to own that, and women are proud to own a balanced male female, that's where I feel we're heading. And it's a bumpy ride. It's not a easy ride. There's a lot of like 2 steps forward, 100 back. But I think we're heading in that direction. I'm an eternal optimist.
Well, I agree. I think it's not, as you say, it's going to be a bumpy ride because from what I've seen, a lot of men just don't want to do that. They don't want to, have those kind of feelings. They don't want to be seen as soft or feminine or girly or those kind of adjectives. So this is going to be interesting. Well, let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome and how do these two things relate?
Yeah, well, the term imposter syndrome, I think, is about a 20-year-old term. These two social scientists, women, um, forget it, I can't remember their name. I can hardly remember my children's names, so I'm not going to do names. Names are off the table. Anyway, these two women social scientists at Harvard came up with this term, imposter syndrome. But there's always been this thing where you feel, uh-oh, I'm going to be found out at work that I really am not good enough for this job, or people are going to see I'm not as great a mother as I should be. This constant sort of haunting feeling, and men have it too, but women have it more. And there's been a lot of research done into this, where you just feel you don't belong or you don't live up to the standards. Usually those standards are one that you're setting yourself. And women, we set such impossible high standards of perfection and what we think we have to do to be living up to 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 be as good as the guys, to deserve that raise, to, how many women do you know, myself included, who are afraid to ask for a raise because, well, maybe I don't deserve it. And meanwhile, the guys are getting it. And there's been incredible research done to that men's impression of their capacity at work is way higher than women's impression of our capacity. But actually, we're doing more work and better than many men. So who we think we are is negatively out of proportion to who we are, and the opposite for many men.
They
There's
say
a
that happens at home as well because the women are carrying all the load of the children in the household and shopping, cooking, cleaning, doing stuff for PTA, all the stuff, and then the men take out the garbage and they want a parade. All kind of
oh
round
yeah,
applause and
oh
stuff.
yeah. My husband will often say like, I loaded the dishwasher, and I have to really work hard not to say, and what's your point? I'm like, thank you, honey. Like,
Yeah, it's like they're little kids. They want a pat on the head. It drives me crazy. It just drives me nuts. But yeah, so I am in full agreement. So, but
and
why
yeah.
don't we have? I mean, I'm not that group. I will ask for raises, and when I go in,
Oh,
they say,
good
"Well,
for
this
you.
is our starting salary." I say, "Oh no, that's not nearly enough.
Oh,
I
wow.
can't. I can't
Hey,
even get
wait,
out of bed
how
for
did
that."
you like that? How do you think that happened for you?
People ask me that, and Elizabeth, I think I was just born like this, just kind of
Mm,
a
mm,
contrarian. Um,
love it.
I don't, I've given it so much thought because women have, they've asked me, well, if I want to develop those traits, what do I need to do? And I just don't know. All I can say is no is my favorite word. No is I say no, and then I might go back and say, oh, well, wait a minute, I changed my mind. But no, no, that's not good enough. No,
Well,
that's not
it
enough. No,
ha-
I don't want that.
it hasn't been easy for me. So I think when things aren't easy for somebody, like it's easier to come up with how to deal with it. So I do have some ways
Oh,
in
I'm all
case,
ears.
in case any of us listening are feeling, oh yeah, that's me. The first thing that really helps me is and I did a study of this for the book. I look to women who I think, like you, are really strong, powerful women. And I check out, do they have imposter syndrome? The most amazing women you would not believe, like Dr. Angelou, Dr. Maya Angelou. I heard her say to Oprah once, I've written like 40 books or something like that. Every time a new book is about to come out, I think to myself, oh no, this is the one where they're going to discover that I'm a fraud, that I'm really not a good writer. Every single time a book would come out, she would think that. And then when I heard recently, a couple of years ago, I think it's recently because I want Obama still to be our president so much, I stopped thinking about those other years. Anyway,
Those
the
waste of
first
time people.
the first lady, Michelle Obama, was speaking to a bunch of young students, and somebody asked her, "Do you have imposter syndrome?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I still got it. I still got it. I hear what she said here. She
Wow.
said, it doesn't go away. That feeling that you shouldn't take me seriously. What do I know? I share this with you," she said to the girls, "because we all have doubts in our abilities about our power and what power is. But let me tell you something. I have been at probably every powerful table you can think of. I've worked at nonprofits. I've been at foundations. I've worked in corporations, served on corporate boards. I've been in the White House. I've been at G summits. I've sat in at the UN. Here's what I've learned. They're not that smart. The people in those rooms, they're not that smart." And I've heard so many powerful women say that's what they've learned after so many years. Oh, they're all just making it up. So why don't I just make it up? Why don't I just do my homework, be the best I can be, and then make up what I want this show to be? And so when I hear people like Dr. Angelou, First Lady Michelle Obama, lots of other women I have admired through the years saying, wow, they're still suffering from it, somehow I feel in good company. I feel like I'm not so weird. I'm not so weak. I can get over this. They got over it. She wrote 40 books. She was the first lady. So I like to remember that. So that's one way. And the other one is there's this woman who wrote a book about the secret of being a successful woman. And she said, bar none, the fastest way to kick the imposter feeling is to adopt what I've dubbed the competence rule book for mere mortals,
The
meaning
confidence rule
the
book for minimal.
competence, the competence rule book for mere mortals, meaning we have such a high bar for what we think competent means. Women do. Women, we expect so much more of ourselves than is often necessary, and we have to stop this drive for perfectionism and accept, do the best we can, and know that that's damn great. It's already great. There's another quote I love. A woman said, her name is Sarah Hagi. She said, "Lord, grant me the confidence of a mediocre white man."
I'm
And
not supposed to be laughing, but that was funny.
but I add to that. It's like, grant me that confidence, but grant me still a desire for excellence. I want to be excellent, but I don't want to kill myself all the time. So
Right.
grant me confidence, but a continued drive for excellence, both of them. Um, it's just not enough to say, oh, other people aren't living up to it, so I won't either. I want to be excellent. I want to be great,
Right.
but I
I think
don't
that's a
want,
self-esteem thing too, right? I mean, it's
what'd
like
you
if
say?
you, I said that's kind of connected to self-esteem. If you always do your best, then you can feel proud of yourself. If you just sit on your butt and just skate by in life, what's there to be
Yeah,
proud of?
there's excellence, and then there's the constantly thinking you're not living up to some sort of standard and driving yourself crazy and being haunted by this feeling like I'm not enough. So there's excellence, and there's giving yourself a break and forgiving yourself for not doing it perfectly all the time.
I liked it when I was reading about Thomas Edison, and people were saying, "Yeah, but look at that light bulb you made. You made 1,000. You failed 1,000 times." He says, "No, I didn't fail 1,000 times. I just found 999 ways it won't work." And that, I kind of adopted that mentality, and that, so you don't take it as a knock you down kind of failure. You just step up and keep going. Try again. Let's go.
Yeah, that's 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 the way to get over it, and to get up and keep going, and make sure the worst critic in the room isn't yourself.
Why do women? But I've noticed that women do. You're right. Pick on ourselves a lot. When I used to work as a fitness trainer, I had to make the sessions with my clients the no pick on yourself hour, because they would talk, oh yeah, my shoulder, I'm losing weight, but look at this little microscopic piece of fat that I have at my waist. It's a love handle. And I'm like, I have a magnifying glass and I don't see this. What are you talking about? My thighs, my chin, my back fat. It was always something that, and it was like they couldn't feel. Just say, look in the mirror and say, I have really changed my body. I'm looking fabulous. They had to pick at themselves in some way. So I had to cut that off. It was driving me nuts. So you
I
cannot
think
talk about
that's
yourself
great.
this hour. That's it,
I
period.
And that's another way to interrupt the imposter syndrome, is to do it for each other. Like if you're in a meeting and you hear a woman say, well, this may not be right, and I'm sorry if you've heard this before, but that sort of hesitancy
Hmm.
and this apology before you've even said anything. I like to interrupt that and say, um, heap praises on a woman who is picking at herself or apologizing before even having said anything, and to try to interrupt that impostery kind of behavior and say, no, go ahead. I really want to hear what you're saying because I've been so impressed with your work so far. I like to do that for other women. Um, and I think it
That's a good
sets a
idea.
model for us to do that for each other.
Okay. Ladies and gents in the listening audience, if you have a question for Elizabeth, just type it in the chat stream and I'll put it across the screen for her to respond to. Just type question first so that I can identify it as a question versus just a regular comment. That would be greatly appreciated. We're talking rather about imposter syndrome. She just gave some really great examples of how women feel like they're not good enough. They're going to be found out and they feel like a fraud and a fake, which is just really sad. It's really sad.
And men feel this way too, for guys, you in the audience. I, I don't want to exclude you, because everyone suffers from this, especially power dynamics are always here. So those with the least power often feel it the most.
Interesting. Okay, let me scroll down here and see. Oh my goodness, what's wrong with this thing? I'm having technical challenges, Elizabeth. It's not letting me scroll down. I guess I'll see it in a minute. Um, how can we use these lessons in relationships? Because this channel is primarily, that's what we talk about the most. is interpersonal relationships of all types. But do you think people have imposter syndromes in their romantic partnerships as well?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I think the whole culture has such a skewed idea of what a romantic relationship is all about. We have these standards that we're going to be in love forever, and that this person is going to be perfect, and she's going to be gorgeous forever, and he's going to be smart and funny forever. And then like reality sets in, and we either feel we're not living up to what this person wants us to be. I'm not good enough. I'm not thin enough. I'm not beautiful enough. I'm not buff enough. I'm not making enough money. And we stop seeing the human soul in each other, the vulnerable person in front of us, deserving of understanding and love and help, because we either are feeling like a fraudulent woman or a fraudulent man. Like poor men in relationships, they often just have this burdensome feeling that they can't ever show emotions. They have to be strong all the time. They got to bring in the money. It's a tremendous burden. And women, we have our own burden in relationships. So I think it's probably at the core of so many couples having problems, which is when we stop seeing each other as regular old flawed human beings doing the best we can, trying to grow, trying to change, but we're never going to be perfect. I
Ever.
think putting down that torture of perfection, either what we expect of our mate or what we think they expect of us, and just being bumbling humans together is the key to love.
Here's a question. Well, this is a comment from Ryan, and she's talking about a book that she's writing.
Oh, I love this. Oh my God. Listen, Ryan, I've written quite a few books, and every time I'm writing a book, I go through this. Whether no matter what the subject is, I find the irony where I can't believe I'm writing about this. Let's say I'm writing about that subject I just talked about, being a vulnerable human being with your partner. And I've just been a terrible person all day to my husband. And I'm like, I can't believe I'm writing this book. But often, and I hope this helps you, Ryan, there's a wonderful saying, we teach what we most need to learn, and we're often our own worst student. So I've run a conference center for almost my whole life. I'm in my 60s now. I started it in my 20s. And I have met so many of the great authors and teachers of our times, whether they're self-help people or spiritual people or business gurus. And the irony in those people's lives, you think, you have people on a pedestal. Oh, the person who wrote that book about health is probably the healthiest person in the world, or that person who wrote about relationships, I'll meet them and I'll find out they're on their fifth marriage or something. And I'll be like, at first I'm horrified. And then I'm like, no, I guess they know a lot. Like you said, they have fallen, they have gotten up, they've dusted themselves up. So, Ryan, as you are writing a book about that feeling of imposter syndrome, and you feel like an imposter, I say to you, you are just the person we need to hear from, because you're learning stuff. So tell us what works for you. Tell the truth about when you are feeling like an imposter, and then tell us what works. That's so much better than hearing it from someone who has no idea what they're talking about.
Okay, let's get Gia's comment up next. She says, "What are some ways we can own our behavior rather than feeling like an imposter?"
Well, that's the best question there is, because we're only going to get over that syndrome by owning our own behavior. It's not going to come from the outside. No one's going to give it to us. You know, I'm sorry I keep quoting people, but I love to quote women. And
Oh, no
Beyonce,
problem. I love it.
Beyonce said something at some concert or something where it's like, power is not given to you. You have to take it. And that doesn't mean you have to take it aggressively or by stepping on people or being an egomaniac a-hole, but you have to claim your own power because everyone, first of all, most of the time people don't even know what you're going through. So if you're sitting quietly in a meeting, feeling afraid to speak up, let's say at work, nobody's going to step in there and help you unless you've got some women friends in there or men friends in there who know your heart. So the first thing I would say is get some people on your side. Be honest. Don't be ashamed to say to your friends, people in your family, people in the workplace, I am suffering from imposter syndrome. I am afraid to speak up because I don't think I'm smart enough, good enough, belonging here. I feel like a fraud. Get some feedback from other people who can show you a mirror of their truth about you, which I can assure you is better than your truth about you. And the other beautiful thing that happens when you're not afraid to tell the truth about your suffering is people will say, really, you too? I feel like that all the time. And you're like, you? But you act so XYZ. You're so successful. Getting it out there into the public space, whether that's your sisters at home, in your family, in the workplace, it's an amazing magic. It's a magic thing when you tell the truth and you don't do the kind of Instagram pretend, look how perfect my life is, because I'm telling you, people, it's not. I don't know anyone whose life is like that, and I know a lot of people. So tell the truth, get some people on your side. And if you're having trouble with that, I'm a big fan of therapy. I think therapy is a spiritual path to go and unpack some of the things in your heart that are keeping you from growing into your greatest self.
Agreed. Ryan has a second question for you.
Does the imposter syndrome also look like someone asking themselves 1,000 times, am I doing this right? Are people lying to spare my feelings? Oh, yeah,
Oh, that's deep.
that is deep. And I'll tell you something. I'm going to go back to what I said to the last question. I am a big fan of telling the truth. I'm a big fan of, unless it's a stupid, unsafe thing to do, to say to that person who you think is lying to spare your feelings, to get in there and mix it up a little, to say, I don't really believe you. I don't see myself like that. Are you just saying that to spare my feelings? Like, that is the scariest thing for us humans to do. I don't know why. I taught after 9/11. I was a lot of people who are mindfulness meditation teachers were asked to come in because the first responders who had PTSD, the state was paying people to help them get over their PTSD, and they were making some of the guys take these courses in how to do mindfulness meditation, how to deal with their stress, how to deal with their PTSD. So I worked for several months with a bunch of firefighters in downtown New York City. And I'm telling you this, Ryan, because um, I these guys were great. I loved these guys. They were so funny. They loved me. We had a thing, but they would never ever admit their feelings of inadequacy. They just couldn't do it. They were more afraid of having honest emotional exchanges than they were to go into a burning building that had just had planes thrown into it. They had such
Wow.
courage to do that. But when I would suggest something like, why don't you ask your wife what she's feeling right now? Or why don't you tell your son that you have nightmares and you can't sleep? Why don't you get honest? No, I'll never do that. I can't admit that. I can't admit that. And I would say to them, you're so brave there, but you're so chicken shit here. Like, be brave. Be brave with your beloveds, come clean, say stuff. So, yes, I think men often feel they're imposters of the heart, emotional imposters, like they don't know what they're feeling. They don't know how to tell people that they about their fears and their emotions and their sadness. So listen, since you're writing a book about this, Ryan, the next time you are asking yourself, are people lying to spare my feelings? Go check it out. Be a heart warrior and check it out.
You have another question here, Elizabeth, from Christine. It says, what are some questions that you can ask yourself? Is it really imposter syndrome, or is it just
Mm.
I'm not in the job, relationship, situation I'm supposed to be in? How can you tell the difference?
I bet that
Mm,
question comes up a lot on your show.
a
It's the
lot.
kind of, should I leave or should I stay?
Exactly.
Am I duping myself here because I'm trying to be a good person?
Give people a
Or
chance comes up a lot. But I
yeah.
love you, though, comes up a lot. And if you love somebody, you're supposed to try to work it out. You're
Mhm.
not supposed to just leave them.
Mm.
So yeah, this comes up a lot. You're correct.
Yeah. Well, Christine, the first thing for you to kind of take a big breath on is that I don't know, and no one knows. This is like there's no the 5 things to do to figure out if you should leave or stay, the job, the relationship, whatever. It is a cluster of the biggest human problems. So you're not alone. You're not some sort of weirdo who's dealing with something so strange. We all deal with this. And it's often just a feather's breadth between knowing, should I leave? Should I stay? Is this the right job for me? Is this my purpose? Is this partner of mine the right person? Um, it always helps me to know that, oh, I'm struggling with a chronic human situation here. Everybody struggles with it. So don't heap onto the problem shame that you don't know exactly what to do. But that being said, there are some things to do. There, it is a beautiful thing to work on a relationship and to give it a chance and to make it work. But work should have results. In my first marriage, I was always working on it, but nothing would happen. It would be like a treadmill. You're running really, really hard, but you never get anywhere. We worked and worked, but the problems just never changed. I've been married now to my second husband 35 years. And the
Wow.
main the main difference is we got problems, we work on it, and we move through them and we grow and change together. It's not always easy. It's not always fun, but there's progress. There's movement. And that's the same for a job too. It's like if you think you're just doing the best you can and you're working and working, but still nobody's respecting you. Still, you're not getting ahead. Still, people are getting raises and you're not. At some point, if you really think you've given it your all and you're not just complaining and not doing your piece, at some point you've got to do the leap. The leap is hard, but often you just have to leap into the unknown. And what's the worst that could happen? You could look back and say, oh, wow, I'm doing the same stuff in the new job. It was about me, but then you've learned.
That's pretty sad.
But sometimes it takes that. Sometimes it takes the next job or the next relationship for you to be like, wow, I thought it was about them out there, but it's really about me in here. It can take some mistakes, don't you think?
Yeah, it does, but it's hard to admit that. And I think that, when people go through, we had a letter through the advice column very similar to that. And the young lady left a job and then she wanted to go back to where she had the problem because she realized that it wasn't the job, it was her. So that
What
this
a
was this fresh. We just did that letter, I don't
Yeah,
know, maybe a week or two ago.
but that's not sad to me at all. That's consciousness growing in her. It sometimes takes, I have my first book is called Broken Open, How Difficult Times Can Help Us Grow. And we often grow through the hardest times. And that just seems to be the way humans learn, through mistakes that you then try to consecrate toward learning. Okay, I made that mistake. That was a good job. I blew it. God, please help me take that in now and make some radical inner change. I want to change. And that's a beautiful, that's the hero's journey, the changing through difficulty.
Gotcha. Well, I want to give you, this has been great, Elizabeth, and I just want to give you an opportunity to tell everyone where they can find you and your books, especially, if they want to read your latest work, Cassandra Speaks.
Well, I have a website where you can find all that out, elizabethlesser.org.org. That's where it all is.
Well, that's where you can find her, ladies. And I think reading that book, you sent a copy, and my my moderator read it. We were splitting the things up because there are just so many. I just didn't have time to do it all myself. But we liked what you had to say, so I think it'll be a good reading for the listeners here because everyone's on that path to try to be a better person. That's why they're here. That's why we
Yeah.
do this every year. So thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
No problem. So everybody, we do. Yeah, these been great? I mean, all the guests came with such a wide variety of topics, and like I was saying a few days ago, they're coming up with issues to discuss that even I don't really think about as being a contributing problem to some of the issues that the viewers are having in their relationships, in their work life, in their family relationship with their children, all kinds of dynamics. So the conversations will continue. Let's see, who do we have on for tomorrow? Tomorrow's guest, let me see who's up for tomorrow. Oh, that's Reagan. Reagan Petrucha is on tomorrow. We're going to be talking about narcissism and discovering it in your partners and what to do about it. So that should be interesting. And the lady who was going to be here on Monday had an emergency in her family. So I'm going to be hosting a show on Monday, the 21st. I don't know what my topic will be yet, but I'll figure out something. So we fill in for her. But yeah, tomorrow is Reagan, and hopefully you guys can make it through to watch that. In the meantime, like the video you just saw, share a link or two, doesn't have to be this one, and subscribe to the channel. We'll be back tomorrow and then every day through the end of the month as we wind down to February 28th and the end of February. So I will see everybody hopefully tomorrow. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day.